Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Sunday's edition of the dceu Daily. And welcome to my channel. Please show your support. If you like me, if you like the channel, if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. Why did Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice underperform at the box office? Before you all scream at me, it underperformed at the box office. I love that movie. I love the Snyderverse. Hey, pie eaters at the back. I love the Snyderverse. We're just talking facts. The projection from Warner Brothers and the hope was for Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice to hit $2 billion at the global box office. Now, working out the permutations and the numbers, you would say, yeah, think about it. Spider-Man No Way Home during a pandemic is just under that. Batman and Superman are in this movie. It makes sense, right? So anyway, also we must bring into the conversation the Batman that will clear well over 600 million after this weekend's end. But something to remember is that the money people, the people who talk about box office, the box office analysts are saying they're going for a target by the time their global run is over of $800 million, and it's not the $1 billion global box office we were all hoping for. Now, of course, these analysts have been wrong before. We went from, they said the first weekend they were talking about one figure, and they underperformed that by 10 million, and actually the Batman made 10 million more than they actually projected. So you can't trust the analysts totally, but at the moment, it's going to hit 850 million. Now that's great, but it's still the opinion of Warner Brothers, and this is a fact, that Batman and Superman should be hitting $1 billion and over $1 billion. That's what they think. They're the facts. So what's the difference? The Batman is perceived as this much better movie than Batman vs Superman when you listen to Cinemaphiles, right? They talk about the film, the Batman stans are extremely happy with it. Everyone's going out to watch a 3-hour, really dark movie, right? And gritty movie. Now, for it to be clearing, 600 million after its third weekend tells you that it's not just the Batman stans that are going back for more and more and more. It's the mainstream audience. Now, this is shocking, of course. So why has this happened? Clearly, they like the movie, but also we must remember there's no competition. There's no interest in films really out there in terms of mainstream. Now, I'm sure there's some beautiful indie movies out there right now, but we know it's not a great period in the film industry for indie movies, although Coda has been, I think it's just won, the PGA award or something, whatever that is, and there's a bit of controversy about that film, and basically it's another film about representation and inclusion, and they award films for that rather than them being actually good movies. So why, in Warner Brothers' eyes, why did Batman vs Superman fail at the global box office? It had an amazing record-breaking opening. It was huge, and if it had a great second weekend, this film would have approached $2 billion. The problem was that this film should never have been called Batman vs Superman. So the whole thing, the framing of this movie is the reason it failed. The removal of half an hour from Zack's Ultimate Edition cut, the 3 hours, they cut it down to 2.5 hours, was a big reason why this film didn't do as well in the global box office, and its perception was all wrong. We know from Zack and Chris Terrio that it was the studio who decided to call this Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, it's a very good marketing idea. Let's call it Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Who will win, right? It gives the audience a certain perception, but the perception was wrong because it wasn't a Batman vs Superman movie. But they wanted you to think that you were going to see an action-packed, popcorn chomping, face-off between Batman and Superman, and they literally only fought for like 9-10 minutes. So obviously the mainstream audience were coming out, they went, they only fought for 9 minutes, that's ridiculous. I mean, 9 minutes in screen time is quite long, but you can understand where they're going with this, the mainstream audience, because they were sold a different movie. The title sells that fight. So you expect them to fight in different intervals within the movie. And it didn't happen. Because this film, within its content and narrative, isn't a Batman versus Superman movie. You know, they could have called it Dawn of Justice, because it is Dawn of the Justice League. They could have called it Superman and Batman Public Enemies, because Batman's literally a public enemy at this point. He's branding people, and Superman to half the world is also a public enemy. So that could have been quite a cool name as well. You call it anything but Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. You could have actually called it The Dark Knight Returns. You could have actually called it that. Now, it kind of has certain elements from The Dark Knight Returns, but it's not a pasted and copy adaptation, so there would have been a problem with that. But maybe Zack could have done that. And Superman would have still been in that movie, and you could have still used it for your Justice League format. So there were so many names that would have been more accurately describing this movie than Batman versus Superman. As I say, it gave a false assumption. If you look at the Batman, it's called The Batman. Now, this was supposed to be the title of Ben Affleck's The Batman movie, the one he was going to star in, write in, produce and direct. We know that. But this film was called The Batman. So all you expect really is the Batman. And we really got a lot of Batman in this film. Now, also what I've referenced before is the way that during DC Fandom 2020, and therefore beyond that, Matt Reeves was going out telling the consumer that this is a certain type of movie, right? It's not that. It's nothing like, it's like no Batman movie you've ever seen before. He told us that. He told us this was a detective story, a noir detective story. By telling us that, we knew there probably wouldn't be as much action as there normally is in a Batman movie. So the audience knew what they were getting. The box office has been great. The reviews have been solid, mainly. Now, as I said a couple of weeks ago, if the Batman was in the DCEU and Matt executed this film the same way, this film would have flopped, because the expectation would have been that it's part of a universe. You need Easter eggs, you need cameos, but because it's in its own universe and it's doing its own thing, people had no expectations of it. I mean, some people were trying to say Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn was going to be in it. IMDb put her name down. We all know we can't trust IMDb, right? But we knew what the Batman was going to be. I mean, if you go back to the Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice marketing, mainly it was action sequences we saw. So we did have this impression of a really, really loud movie that didn't have much dialogue in it, maybe didn't have all that much storytelling in it. It looked like what it said on the title card, Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice. It looked like they were going to be fighting in intervals in a large portion of the movie. I mean, I remember sitting in the cinema, and my experience of Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice is a wonderful one. I loved it then, and I love it today. I remember sitting there, and we get this music. Dun, 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 you know, like the Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL, like really slow, emotional Batman music to see the origin of how Bruce Wayne's parents are killed. And then the words come out really small. Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice, and I'm thinking, that's so understated. You know, I remember, you know, Superman the movie with these large credits, because that's the kind of arena I come from. You know, but this was such an understated movie, so you get that. And then you get the Battle of Metropolis from Bruce Wayne's point of view. And it's brilliant. But already, you know, this is not the film that was advertised. This is not really Batman versus Superman. This is a Dawn of Justice movie. This is Superman and Batman, public enemies. It describes the film much better, but you don't have to call it that. They're just two suggestions. So even though I disagree with Chris Terrio when he came out during the marketing for the Snyder Cut last year, saying it was wrong for the studio to call it Dawn of Justice, I agree now. Because it goes to my theory that Batman versus Superman was divisive and it failed at the box office. Now, you lot are going to laugh at me and say, well, 850 million. That's not a failure, Nick. It is when you spend that type of money on a film. They spent a lot of money on that film. They wanted $2 billion, and quite right too. But that film was never going to be $2 billion when you never told the world what it was going to be. Now, ironically, the 850 that's being projected for the Batman is actually around the same kind of box office that Batman v Superman got. And I know a lot of Snyder fans are going to go, you see, you're calling that a hit, but that's what BVS made. And I heard someone on Twitter, many people on Twitter, Snyder fans, going, what's WB's problem? It nearly made $1 billion. Well, I'll tell you what WB's problem is. They didn't target it, project it for $1 billion. They wanted $2 billion. That's what WB's problem was. The failure at the box office and the divisive response to BVS isn't Zack Snyder's fault. It's the studio's fault for cutting time off the movie, marketing it in a dishonest way, and calling it a name that doesn't describe what the movie is. Man of Steel tells you what you're going to get. Even if you don't understand that, that's what, people call him within the comic book community, right? When you see the movie, he's a man of fucking steel, right? You get that title. Aquaman's about Aquaman, right? There's another problematic title, Birds of Prey and the emancipation of the fantabulous and emancipation of one Harley Quinn. They put Birds of Prey at the beginning, like they're the stars of the film, and Harley Quinn's just there, but she's not. It's a Harley Quinn movie. It's not actually a Birds of Prey movie. That's why that film underperformed at the box office. So, the audience, look at a title, look at the marketing, and think, okay, I'm going to see this film. So the audience, when they went to see Birds of Prey in the opening weekend, thought, right, we're going to see a Birds of Prey film. They came out realizing that they saw a Harley Quinn film, and that's not what they wanted to go and see. So audience didn't come back to that film because word of mouth is very important. So when the mainstream audience, because they're important, I mean, us Snyder fans supported the movie and loved it, but we're not enough. Right, so when mainstream audiences went to see BVS, they went, what about those trailers? It's called Batman versus Superman, and they fought for 9 minutes. And this is why it underperformed. And that's why the mainstream audience called Batman versus Superman a bad movie. It's not really a bad movie. It's one of the best CBMs of all time. But ultimately, WB told the audience they were getting one thing and they went and got another. And that's why this film was very, very problematic in terms of the mainstream audience. Now, I think only about 4 or 5 DC movies have ever joined the $1 billion club. So let's look back at this. So if I remember rightly, so The Dark Knight got $1 billion at the box office. The Dark Knight Rises got $1 billion. Joker movie did, and Aquaman got $1 billion. If there's any other movies, DC movies you can think of that got $1 billion at the box office, please let me know in the comments. But I don't think there is. So there's about 4 DC movies. So they haven't really consistently reached the $1 billion club. Because for DC to get into the, $1 billion club in those 4 movies, they've really had to make really, really good movies. So as I say, the projection for the Batman is 850. It still could reach $1 billion without China. By the way, the Joker went well over $1 billion without China. The Batman is at least receiving some money from China, even though it's not as much as it would have been. But if the Batman doesn't reach $1 billion, you can't use China as an excuse because of the pandemic and stuff, because the Joker movie had no China. So I just think the Joker is one of the best CBMs ever made. I definitely think it's far superior to the Dark Knight Rises. And I'm probably going to get lots of unsubs here, but I think it's better than the Batman. Not that you can compare a Joker movie to these Batman movies, but it is a DC movie. And I think it's better than Aquaman as well. So, in fact, very few DC movies have actually reached the $1 billion club. Why is that? Is it because DC movies are not relevant? Of course not. It's the way they're made. There's been hardly ever the right people making these movies. But when you get it right so beautifully, like Aquaman absolutely deserves its $1 billion global box office because It is what was advertised. This is why James Wan at the time said, I'm not letting you, advertise this movie until I've got the CGI spot on. He's very disciplined with his movies. He's he likes his movies to be the best they can be. And Aquaman is stunning. A stunning accomplishment. This is kind of what you would expect from a 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, a Captain Nemo movie, right? But it looks stunning. But it's not just that. The characterizations are great. It's not as much of a perfect movie as the first Wonder Woman is, because that film looks stunning. It is stunning, but the characterizations are emotional, beautiful. It's a piece of poetry as far as I'm concerned. Aquaman just misses what Wonder Woman achieved, just slightly, but it's still a really good CBM. I mean, you look at something like the first Wonder Woman. For me, a perfect movie. I mean, I watched it yesterday, and I'm always crying and so emotional after I've seen that film. That film means a lot to me. A 49-year-old guy who looks up to a female superhero at the end of the movie, and they call us toxic. This movie inspired everyone. Girls, women, everyone. And that's what these movies should do, no matter the gender or the representation of the people playing the movie or the comic book characters. And that's how you make all the money, right? But you could argue, because everyone was celebrating the $800 million that Wonder Woman made, but they gave it an extended run just to hobble onto that $800 million. I remember. Wonder Woman is part of the Holy Trinity. Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman should be easily getting to $1 billion. And that Wonder Woman film is perfect. So you wonder why that film didn't get $1 billion. Because basically, to get $1 billion CBMs these days, you've got to have the connections, the cameos, the Easter eggs, and if you don't have them, you've got no chance. And another problem for poor Wonder Woman in that first film, which is an amazing film, is that the perception of the DCEU at that point was that it's a bad franchise. So that didn't help. Now, people didn't like Suicide Squad, even though they made a lot of money. Batman vs. Superman was divisive. Man of Steel was divisive, but not as divisive as Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Nothing's as divisive as that movie. So this is why, in Warner Brothers' eyes, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice underperformed at the box office. It underperformed because of them, because of the title they gave it, the perception they gave the movie to the mainstream audience. They sold it in the wrong way. They called it a bad title. Well, it's actually a very good title. It just doesn't fit the kind of movie that BVS is. So ultimately, if this was marketed honestly and it had a good title to describe what the movie was, I think this movie may have got, just under, maybe 1 billion, or, 1 billion, or, just over 1 billion, or maybe even closer to 2 billion. If it was marketed properly, I think this movie would have made a lot more money. And if it was called a more accurate name. So I blame Warner Brothers for the divisive reaction of that movie, because when you expect something and you get something else, you get frustrated. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the way it was marketed and what it was called, is a bit like someone saying, I'm going to buy you this really amazing thing that you've wanted for so long, and you've been telling everyone you want a PS5. You get this big box, you open it up, and it's a pair of fucking socks, right? Of course you're going to be disappointed. And that's what it was. The audience were told they were going to get one thing, and when they went to cinemas, they got another. But if they were actually told what they were going to get, then I think they would have loved the movie a lot more, and we'd still, or by now, the Snyderverse would have been completed. So, finally today, I want to talk about Superman in live action. I want to talk about what is happening with my beloved Superman. Well, from the outside looking in, we still have no Superman projects in active development. Now, about a year ago, I think it was announced that we were getting Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams, and they were going to be doing a Superman of colour. Very exciting, especially if that Superman of colour was going to be Calvin Ellis. There were rumours it was actually going to be the OG Kal-El, but played by a black actor. Very problematic. actor of colour Ray Fisher even came out and criticised this decision because they knew they were trying to replace Henry Cavill. And he, like us, loves Henry Cavill's Superman. You don't replace Superman with Superman of colour. You add the Superman of colour, Calvin Ellis, not Kal-El, as an addition to Henry Cavill. But you don't replace Henry Cavill and think you're clever. And then you announce the Val Zod Superman, and you think that everyone's going to forget about Henry Cavill. No one's ever going to forget about Henry Cavill's Superman. People who don't even like the movies he's in like him. You can't win this battle. And I've repeatedly discussed this rumour that they put stock footage from Henry, from Man of Steel, in the Flash movie. So the Flash has a huge problem now because people will not accept that. If that is true, that movie needs to take that out and either put Henry in it or disband the entire movie. The Flash movie has huge problems. So Ta-Nehisi Coates' Superman movie, he was supposed to complete the script in October. We haven't heard from him since. It's now March. We're heading to April. And the Val Zod stuff, nothing. Is it still in active development? Has someone said no? What's happened? This is what I think's happened. I think that Toby Emmerich saw Ta-Nehisi Coates' script and ditched it. A bit like they ditched Ava DuVernay's multiple pitches for New Gods. And I told you in advance of that Warner Brothers didn't go to her. She went to them with constant pitches, and Tom King, legendary comic book writer, was helping her. But they never said she could have the movie. So they dumped her and said, here you go, have your show on the CW and have something on HBO Max just to keep her quiet, right? So not accused of being racist. So I think they saw Ta-Nehisi Coates' script, and Ta-Nehisi Coates is a huge social commentator. So there would have been lots of social commentary in this movie, obviously. They clearly didn't like the script, but so they didn't kind of embarrass Ta-Nehisi or themselves because they announced it, they just kept quiet on it. Now, the Val Zod one, I mean, when I heard Val Zod, they were doing Val Zod with Michael B. Jordan producing and maybe starring as Val Zod, I didn't know about that character. So I read up on him, and I think I did a video about him as well. Very interesting character with a very interesting backstory. So, yeah, I really thought that was exciting. But we haven't heard anything about that either. So, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was a betting man, I'd say neither of those projects are happening because probably Zaslav and Discovery said no. Now, we know that David Zaslav has said that Superman, Batman and Wonder Woman will be his priority when he comes in. He said that. He spoke about the Holy Trinity. So that's going to be the focus. That would say to me that we may even start with a Holy Trinity movie. Now, whether that's with Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck or new actors, I don't know. But we could go with a Holy Trinity movie. I would be really excited about this. I prefer a Holy Trinity movie. You could argue that a Holy Trinity movie before a Justice League kind of get-together is a better idea anyway. So that's what David Zaslav has said. Because David Zaslav's here to make money, not to make friends, not to virtue signal. He's coming in to make money, and he's a supporter of the talent. So I think better days are ahead. So anyway, I thought I'd do today's DCEU Daily because we know the Batman's out there and doing incredibly well in the box office, just to talk about BVS and why it failed in some people's eyes. And the only people to blame here is not the filmmaker, but Warner Brothers Pictures. This has been the DCEU Daily, Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily, here with Mick, here on Movies TV Mad, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video, or maybe more realistically, tonight on my live video. You've seen how honest and direct I am on my live, so come in. I don't bullshit anyone, and for me, it's about integrity and directness. If I have an opinion, if someone says something to me and I think they're kind of bullshitting me a little bit, I will just try and reframe what they're saying, give my opinion, because I think that's really, really important. So until tonight's live video, I will see you again. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. See you again soon.